My dad left before I was even born. It was my mom who raised me alone against the world. I was 10 years old that Christmas. My mom, Erica, had just finished making dinner. It was simple: mashed potatoes, roasted chicken, and her special apple pie. She worked 2 jobs, so Christmas Eve was one of the few nights she could actually sit down and smile for a while. The lights on the tree flickered in red and green, reflecting in the windows like tiny stars. I remember how delighted she looked when she handed me a candy cane and said,
"Merry Christmas, my little man."
For a while, it was perfect, until we heard the knock. It was close to midnight. Mom frowned.
That's strange. Who could it be this late?
The knock came again, louder this time.
Stay here, Noah.
She whispered and went to the door.
Who is it?
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas, ma'am. Delivery for your family.
My mother's brow furrowed.
I didn't order anything.
My mom looked through the peephole, and I watched color drain from her face. Her eyes widened, but before she could speak, the man outside started kicking our door like he was desperate to get in. I screamed, not knowing what was happening. My mom told me to hide, but I couldn't move in fear. After some violent kicks, our door gave in. Mom grabbed me to her chest and we darted back to the corner, watching a man dressed in a bloodied Santa suit walk into our living room. His eyes looked empty, like he wasn't really there.
Is this how you welcome Santa?
He growled. In his gloved hand was a long kitchen knife, glinting under the Christmas lights. Mom shoved the table against him, sending plates crashing.
Run, Noah!
I froze. The man lunged, knocking the table aside like it was nothing. Mom grabbed my arm and pulled me into the kitchen. We ran, her bare feet slipping on the floor, my candy cane still clutched in my hand. She yanked open the pantry door.
Inside, quick!
We squeezed in together, surrounded by cereal boxes and flour jars. She shut the door and pressed her hand over her mouth, whispering,
"Don't make a sound."
Through the slats, I saw him stalking through the kitchen.
I know you're hiding. Santa sees everything.
Mom was trembling, but her eyes were sharp. She looked toward the back window, just a few feet away from the pantry. It was small, the kind that barely opened wide enough for a kid to slip through. As soon as the man's footsteps faded toward the basement door, Mom led me to the window. She kissed me on the forehead and whispered,
"Listen to me, baby. You have to crawl out that window and run to the neighbors. Don't stop. Don't look back. Please ask them to contact the police."
No, Mommy!
I whispered, tears streaming down my face.
Come with me!
She shook her head, tears in her eyes too.
"I won't fit through. Just do what's Mommy's saying, okay?"
I crawled onto the counter and pushed the window open. The cold hit my face like knives. I turned back, and that's when I saw it, the shadow moving behind her.
Mom!
The man burst from the basement door, grabbing her from behind. The knife glinted as he pulled her back, laughing.
Where are you two going? Christmas just started!
She screamed.
Run, Noah! Go!
But the man grabbed me by the collar next, trying to pull me back in too. But Mom didn't let him. She kept kicking. She clawed at his face. Blood streaked across his cheek as she ripped off a handful of hair. The man howled in rage and let go of me, turning all of his fury on her. I dropped into the snow and ran barefoot through the yard. Behind me, I heard glass shattering, furniture breaking, and my mother's voice screaming. The neighbor's house was 2 doors down. I pounded on the door. When Mr. Harris opened it, I was shaking so hard I couldn't speak.
Oh, man, Mommy's hurt. Call the cops.
He called 911 immediately. I remember hiding under their Christmas tree while he locked the doors and turned off the lights. The sirens came minutes later, but it felt like hours. When the police got to our house, they found the front door broken and the living room trashed. The Christmas tree was on its side, ornaments shattered across the floor. The man dressed as Santa was lying unconscious near the fireplace, bleeding from his head. Mom had hit him with the heavy brass candlestick from the mantel. The officers said she fought like hell, but she didn't make it. They found her collapsed beside him, the knife still in her side. She had lost too much blood before help could arrive. The cops found a picture of me crumpled in her palm. In her last breath, all she thought of was me. It's been 20 years since that night. The cops told me later that the man had escaped from a nearby psychiatric hospital. He'd stolen the Santa costume from a donation drive hours before he broke into our home. He survived the blow to the head, but he's been in a secure facility ever since. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers what he did, but mostly I wonder if Mom knew how brave she was in that moment, how she chose to die so I could live. I can't stand Christmas music anymore. Every night before I go to bed, I ask God why he took the person who wanted to stay. Why do we lose those who care? When my dad left me and never came back, never bothered to check on Mom or his kid, God did nothing. But the only person who tried to make ends meet by devoting her life to her son suffered such a vicious end? How can life be so unfair? Christmas used to be simple in my house. Just me, Mom, and Dad. We did not have a large family, so our holidays were peaceful. Watching movies, playing board games, enjoying my mother's burnt sugar cookies, and my father feigning appreciation for them. That year, though, things were different. Dad said someone new would be joining us for Christmas dinner. He said the new guest was a cousin from his mother's side whom he hadn't seen for a long time. His name was George. When Uncle George arrived, something about him immediately felt off. He was tall, a little overweight, with thinning gray hair. His eyes were still, but he blinked a lot. He came in wearing an old trench coat and carrying a single duffel bag.
Dylan! I've heard so much about you!
He hugged me before I could even react. His arms lingered too long, his breath hot against my neck. I pulled away quickly, forcing a smile. Mom glanced at Dad with a confused look, but Dad just shrugged like he didn't notice anything strange. Dinner was awkward. George kept saying a lot. Every few minutes he'd turn to me and ask pretty weird things, like how old I was or if I had a girlfriend. The way he looked at me while asking made my skin crawl. His eyelids just kept moving like butterfly wings. It made his face look very freaky. At one point, he reached over to touch my hair and said,
"You got strong features. You remind me of someone."
I pushed my chair back and muttered, "Excuse me," before heading upstairs. Mom called after me, asking if I was okay. I just said I was worn out. Truth was, I hated him. I stayed in my room most of the night, playing games with my headphones on to drown out the noise downstairs. I fell asleep not long after. Then, sometime past midnight, I woke up. I heard some soft footsteps coming closer. They stopped right outside my door. My stomach dropped. The doorknob turned slowly, and the door creaked open. Standing there, silhouetted by the hallway light, was Uncle George. He was wearing a Santa suit, not a cheap one either. It looked old and dusty. His beard hung crooked, and in his hands he held a red sack. What are you doing?" I stammered. He grinned, stepping closer.
"Santa brought a gift for his favorite boy."
"You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking. He ignored me. He set the sack down, reached into it, and pulled out a small wrapped box. He held it out toward me again, blinking like crazy.
"Merry Christmas, Dylan. I've been waiting a long time to give you this."
I didn't move. My heart was pounding so loud it hurt. He took another step, then another.
"Come on,"
he whispered.
"Just one more hug for Santa."
That's when I screamed, the kind of scream that ripped straight from my chest before I even knew what I was doing. Mom and Dad came running. The hallway light flashed on and my dad's voice thundered.
"What the hell are you doing in here?"
George flinched, but didn't move away. His hands were shaking now, his smile twitching.
"It's okay,"
he said softly.
"He knows me. We've always been close."
Dad lunged forward and shoved him back.
"Get out of my house, George!"
Mom grabbed my arm, pulling me out of bed. I could barely breathe. George's Santa hat fell off as he stumbled toward the door. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused.
You don't understand,
He muttered, looking at me.
I've known him since the day he was born.
Dad shouted again.
Get out before I call the cops.
George backed toward the hallway, smiling faintly, his teeth yellow and uneven.
You've been my favorite since the beginning, Dylan,
He said.
You always have been.
Then he turned and walked out, just like that. Down the stairs, through the front door, into the snow. Dad locked it behind him and immediately called the police. When the officers came, George was gone. They searched the area and even drove around the neighborhood, but there was no sign of him. His car was still parked outside, engine cold, but the driver's seat was empty. The duffel bag he'd brought was missing too. One of the cops stayed to take statements. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, my hands still shaking. Mom cried quietly in the kitchen, while Dad tried to explain what he knew. There wasn't much. He said George had called him a few days earlier, claiming to be a distant cousin who'd moved abroad decades ago. He'd sounded harmless, just a lonely old man trying to reconnect. My dad never questioned it. But when the police ran his name, they couldn't find a George with the same last name anywhere in our family records. Not on Dad's side, not on anyone's. No ID, no trace, nothing. The box George had tried to give me was still sitting on my nightstand. The officer took it for evidence, but let my parents open it later after it was cleared. Inside was a photograph, a picture of a newborn baby wrapped in a blue blanket. The back was labeled in messy handwriting, Dylan, 2008, my birth year. We had no idea where it came from. My parents stated that the photograph was not from them. It was not even taken at the hospital where I was born. For weeks afterward, I kept seeing flashes of that night in my head. His face, the red suit, and the sound of his voice when he said my name. I slept with the lights on until February. The police never found him. Occasionally, I try to tell myself he was just some crazy guy who got the wrong house. But deep down, I know that's not true. He knew too much. He knew me. I'll never forget the Christmas sleepover when I was 12. It was supposed to be perfect. Hot cocoa, movies, matching pajamas, and staying up till midnight laughing with friends. My dad had gone all out that year. He put lights on the porch, hung stockings by the fireplace, and even rented one of those fake snow machines for the backyard. My best friends, Emily and Harper, came over at around 6. We baked cookies, made a mess in the kitchen, and built a blanket fort in the living room. Everything felt warm, cozy, and safe. Around midnight, we were in the fort watching Home Alone 2, when Emily suddenly froze and whispered that there was someone at the window. Harper and I turned toward the window. At first, I didn't see anything. Then, I noticed it, just beyond the frosty glass, standing near the tree line behind our fence. A man. He was dressed in a Santa suit. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching us. His face glowed red from the lights strung along the fence, making him look even creepier. Harper laughed nervously, saying maybe Dad was trying to scare us. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But Dad was upstairs folding laundry, and the way that figure stood so still, it didn't feel like a joke. We ran to the stairs and called for him.
Dad? There's someone outside.
He came down immediately, half smiling like we were overreacting. Lils, it's probably a neighbor or some guy walking his dog. But when he looked out the window himself, the man was gone. See? Dad said. Just shadows playing tricks. We went back to the fort, but none of us could focus on the movie anymore. Every little creak made us jump. I tried to act brave for my friends, but deep down, I couldn't shake the image of that Santa standing in the snow. About half an hour later, we heard something else. It was a soft thump, followed by another, and it came from above. Soon, there was the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps on the roof. Harper screamed. Emily started crying. I just stared at the ceiling, frozen. Dad burst out of his room, yelling, "What's going on?" We told him someone was on the roof. He grabbed his jacket and flashlight, muttering something about raccoons, and ran outside. We watched through the front window as he circled the house, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the snow. Then, everything went quiet. A minute later, I heard a faint creak. It came from the attic. I felt my heart skip.
Did you guys hear that?
I whispered. Before they could answer, a soft scraping noise came from above, like something or someone was crawling in the attic. We screamed for Dad. He came running back inside, his boots dripping, his flashlight trembling in his hand. We huddled in the hallway and watched my dad pull the attic ladder down. A cold draft hit us from above. I'll never forget Dad's face when he aimed the flashlight upward. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Who opened the window?" We all stared. There was a small, circular attic window, and it was pushed out. Snowflakes drifted in, and there were snowy footprints leading from the window into the darkness of the attic. Dad's voice shook as he said, "I'm calling the police." Before the cops arrived, Dad stood under the attic, grabbing a baseball bat. He could tell someone was inside the attic. When the cops finally showed up, they searched the property, starting with the attic. They were up there for maybe 5 minutes before one of them shouted that someone was hiding behind the old boxes. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help it. They let a man down the ladder. Our next-door neighbor, Mr. Harlan. He was wearing a Santa coat, the hat still on his head, and his hands cuffed behind his back. His face was pale and sweaty, eyes darting around like he was trying to find a way out. Dad just stared, speechless. Mr. Harlan had always seemed harmless, a quiet, lonely guy who waved when we got the mail. Sometimes he'd bring us cookies or offer to shovel our driveway. I'd never imagined that he'd... The officer opened the bag they'd found with him. Inside were clothes that belonged to us, a set of pajamas, socks, and even underwear. They also found a Polaroid camera with a stack of photographs that were taken without our knowledge. Harlan took our photos when we were changing, and he hid in the attic to set up a secret camera in my bedroom for more future content, I guess. When the cops asked him why he did it, he just smiled and said,
"Santa always watches the good girls."
The whole room went silent. Dad put a hand on my shoulder and pulled me close. I'd never seen him so pale before. I could feel him shaking in anger and disbelief. After they took Mr. Harlan away, the police stayed for a while, collecting the cameras and dusting for prints. That night, none of us slept. Dad sat up with us until sunrise, checking the locks every few minutes. He kept apologizing over and over, saying he should have believed us, that he should have noticed something sooner. Around 6 in the morning, the first light of Christmas Day crept through the blinds. Harper and Emily's parents came to pick them up. Dad made pancakes, but I couldn't eat. I just kept thinking about that red suit, those boots on the roof, and the scary smile on Harlan's face. Later that day, a detective called to say that Mr. Harlan had been doing this job for years, breaking into homes, filming families, and collecting memories. They found dozens of tapes in his basement of young girls and boys. I didn't go up into the attic for months. Even now, 2 years later, I still can't fall asleep when I hear the house creak at night. Every Christmas, when the lights flicker on the roof, my chest tightens.